Hey, welcome in to episode 003 of Fatal to Prejudice. Today I am here with one of my best friends, JoJo. We've been friends for approximately 8 or 9 years now, and we get into some pretty deep discussions every now and then, but I'm excited to have a discussion here with you today in this sort of format. All right, so JoJo, how you doing today?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
Had a very good dinner with you. Always great to see my best friend. So
Good. Awesome. I'm glad you could come up for this. I'm pretty excited for you to be here for calling this episode 003.
Right on.
And that was from my first guest having a lot of optimism of what's going to happen with this. Fingers crossed. Yes. Thank you. Appreciate the support.
Always.
So I'm trying the trend here. The first two guests really enjoyed calling this spot the lab. Do you have another idea, or do you think the lab is cool?
The lab works. It's a good space. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
It fits you.
Thank you. Has my style, I guess.
Oh yeah. Yes.
Awesome. Love the judgment here. It's not bad judgment.
No. If I were to pick a room of many, this would be the one I'd say probably fits you.
Love it. Thank you. Anyway, I'm super glad you're here. Very excited to dive into some conversation.
Yeah.
I think you've lived a pretty interesting life, and
To some.
I'm pretty excited to hear more about it. So you grew up in a small town, and honestly, I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head right now. But it's the very, very northwest corner of Ohio. What was the name?
It's in Williams County. So that is the most corner of Ohio.
Yeah.
So grew up there, born and raised, 90s kid.
Yeah, okay.
And then high school through the O's, or school and high school through the O's, and then college where we met.
Yes.
But if you want stories about my childhood or back home,
I'd love to hear it.
I guess that's where we should start then. So grew up, like I said, in rural Northwest Ohio, so farming country.
There's nothing out there besides corn and soybeans and
right
trucks.
You've been there. You've been to my place.
Yes. You can smack a golf ball from your house into Michigan.
Oh, pretty much, yeah. We basically had a firing range for guns. That time you came up, we did shooting and enjoyed ourselves.
Safely.
Obviously safely. Like no one got hurt. Maybe a tree or two, maybe a target or two, but no persons or animals were hurt.
Right. We're trained in handling firearms. We're not some idiots.
No. So grew up in rural Northwest Ohio, child of divorce. That happened around when I was 3. So that was very early on. Don't remember most of that time, so don't know how that affected me as a child, but always having to go back and forth between my parents.
Did you think that was like normal when you were young? Was there a point that you realized like, oh, all the kids around me, that isn't their life?
No. So I guess I assumed that I was fairly typical. Like there were other students, like when I was in elementary school, kindergarten, what have you. Kids talk, like you talk about your families.
Yeah.
So like there were others that had separated parents. Like that was part of it. It wasn't the norm by any means.
Right.
But I guess I never looked at the social stigma from it negatively for myself. My family was well respected in the community, and they were actively involved. Father on the school board, mom was a banker, loan manager for a while in the community, and so it was just part of life. So that happened when I was young. Back and forth between parents' houses during the school year at my mom's, every other weekend with my dad. summers with my dad, every other weekend with my mom. So lots of back and forth. But it was consistent housing. I mean, that I was fortunate for. My dad's house has been in my family since it was built in 1869 on
Wow.
the family plot. Yeah. So when about 5 or so great grandparents ago moved here from Germany, they got a plot of land, and the homestead's been not the same last name of householder, but it's followed a lineage in our family. So live on 180 acres where I do enjoy going up and hunting.
180.
180. That's what I
quite a
stick to.
bit.
That's what I say, and I stick to it.
Yeah.
It's probably plus or minus a couple here or there, but
Yeah.
no, it got a lot of woods and grass and trees, and grew up hunting rabbits and pheasants, and learning to drive on a four-wheeler and then on a gator type rig on our trails. And driving came easy at 16, it was expected. I mean, like, you had to start becoming very independent at 16. So that happened, hunting and fishing, and I was involved with the church, got confirmed as a Lutheran. That was a big thing for my mother's side of the family. So yeah, that was that part of it. Beyond that, so as you know, as your listeners are about to find out, I'm gay. So
I was gonna ask
yeah,
about that,
so-
like when you wanted to get into that.
yeah, so working up to getting into, yes, I'm gay. So being raised in rural Northwest Ohio with farm country and everything else, it was a bit weird or challenging, if you will, because I mean, I was involved in school. I was in student government for the high school. I was in band. I was in choir. I was in plays or musicals, but I was also on the football team. I played.
You did everything.
Yeah, as we talk, I mean, you'll find I've been doing everything. And
Yeah.
I think that reflected in college too.
Oh yeah.
Because in high school, I played all 4 years. I did junior high football, even like I played football. I knew football. And then I did baseball up through middle school. And then I did track, which was more my style of play. I enjoyed the sport more. It was, what can I do to put myself out there and really achieve my own accolades, if you will, achieve and put my own time in for myself.
Yeah.
So came out to myself, if you will, when I was 8th grade going into freshman year, roughly. I
What
started.
age is that? That's like 14 or so.
13,
13, 14.
13, 14.
Yeah.
Was when I, everybody's calling me this. I've watched porn by now. Got caught watching porn already. It's gay porn.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I'm gay.
Yeah.
But once I accepted it, I remember there were nights where I laid in bed, praying, if you will, God, don't let me be gay. Change me, make me.
Really?
Oh yeah. I don't want to say it's every gay person's experience, but if they were raised in any type of religious household with any type of conservatism in it, those thoughts crossed their brain at least once.
Yeah.
But there was, fortunately, it didn't dwell, it didn't persist. But there was a period where I'm like, don't let me be this way. Just because I was fearful of the entirety of the process of having to tell everybody I'm gay and what that reception is always going to be like, and the judgment or potential judgment thereof, because I hadn't really seen much of a positive environment or role model of the coming out process at that point. It had always been characterized by being chastised or being made the butt of a joke or what have you. It wasn't ever the, oh yeah, that's part of life, that's how it is.
Yeah, this was early 2000s. Like, there was not what we have today.
No, so
this was still very much like taboo. Like,
right,
you didn't do this.
no, at that time it would have, when I came out to myself, it would have been probably 06, 07.
Okay.
And so end of Bush years. Fortunately, we were coming to Obama, but it was still, we were under DADT, don't ask, don't tell. Lot of defensive marriage proposals were being implemented in states. California had, not California, I forget the state, so I apologize.
It's all right.
But there were several states that were either challenging marriage equality that had happened or were implementing laws against it. And so it was a very challenging time to see that identity and actually identify with it.
Yeah. And I want to pause really quick and just try to put something into perspective for anyone listening. Is like, this is before the first iPhone came out. This is before Netflix was a streaming service. It was still ordered DVDs to your mailbox.
If that.
Like, this was before we had any sort of technology and like word of like anyone tweeting.
Grindr
there was
didn't
no
exist
Facebook.
yet.
There was no Grindr. There was no Tinder. There was none of that. It was, the internet wasn't what it is today.
And
it was the very early stages of getting into the social medias and the YouTube and all that stuff. MySpace was a thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if you don't know what that is, please Google it. It was the best social media era of any point in time.
Questionable.
Yeah, but there wasn't ads tracking you. There wasn't clout chasing. It was just, you hanging out with your friends.
When a person came to your page, you could have a song play as soon as they got there.
Yes, it was interesting.
Lips of an Angel by Hinder was on mine.
That was yours?
Yeah.
Nice.
But I had to outsource the coding to my younger cousin.
Yes. Yeah, you could customize the backgrounds and the colors and everything to your page. It wasn't this uniform, everyone looks the same except for their pictures type of thing. Yeah, anyway, that was like my tangent on what life was like in the internet space and how far we have come in the past 10 to 15 years.
So I just did the math earlier back in August because I came out to my mom in August of 2008. So it was 15 years ago that I started that part of the journey.
Do you remember that conversation?
Oh yeah, I want to say it's vivid. I only remember bits and pieces, but
yeah,
it's very much there for me. And the thing I have to laugh at now, because I gotta find humor, is that when I came out to my mom, the first thing she asked me was, "Do I want to go to counseling?" I'm like, "No. That this is not a counseling thing. I'm gay.
Yeah,
that's it." But then we hugged and it was fine. I mean, fine as far as I'm not kicked out, and my mom says she still loves me. But she then says, "Oh, I thought your brother would be before you were."
Oh shit. Oh shit.
And so a little bit else about me then is I do have an older brother who's 6.5 years older than me. He was always in the arts. He played in the band. He sang in the choir, and he was very much an artistic child with music and that type of stuff. And really has never sought companionship with anybody. He's not ever really seriously dated. So I actually think he's asexual, which isn't neither here nor there.
Yeah.
But he still hasn't told anybody if that is his identity. He hasn't told anybody that that's what his identity is. But he's content to live on his own as far as I'm aware. And he enjoys his work, and that's his life. He enjoys it.
Yeah. Hey, man, do your thing. Do your thing. Be you.
Right. So
what was the conversation like with your dad when you told him?
I'll take you on the journey here for my coming out.
Awesome.
So I told my mom the summer going into my sophomore year of high school. If I were to back up, I told two friends my freshman year, that some girlfriends in my grade, that I think I like boys. Okay. So with that, a bit of it got out, but no one actually really pursued the subject because I was picked on at that point for being effeminate, if you will, at the school, but no one had concrete evidence or anything. And so it was just the typical harassment or bullying, if you will, of, oh, you're such a fag, or, oh, look at the gay boy type thing.
Yeah, and this was your first year of high school, right?
And in junior high, and I mean, even in elementary school, those terms were being used.
Yeah,
I mean, kids
do that.
As soon as in fifth grade, you have the talk about what puberty is. People know what a hard-on is, and the kids get vicious quick. So it started back then even. But I kept my head down. I tried to do decent in school, and I participated in football and track and baseball and extracurriculars as I could. So with all of that, told a couple friends, and they told a couple people. It didn't go too far though, but people started to know. And then that summer, I had my first sexual experience with a senior that had just graduated. I was a freshman, they were a senior. And I considered that my loss of virginity. No penetration, no blowjob, just handies under the cover at this guy's parents' house. They walked in at one point. That was funny. But so that was the first sexual experience, and that was what I deemed losing my virginity, because that was the most sexualized experience that I had at that point. And that's really what confirmed things for me, or was very much the awakening, if you will, that yes, this is okay. The world's not going to burn from me touching another dude's cock. So once I figured and realized that, it's like, okay, let's tackle the issues and move on. So in high school, I kept it pretty under wraps after I told my mom going into my sophomore year, because my mom was always terrified of, oh, what are they going to do to you? What's their perception going to be of you? And it's a dangerous life. It's a hard life to be gay. And so I didn't come out because I was, one, fearful of continued harassment or worse harassment or worse, and what it would do to my mom at that point. Now I told my mom because I had, at that point, I was a teenager, boy, hormonal. My mom and I weren't on the best of terms at times. And so I knew that if my mom were to reject me, I could move in with my dad, and it would be no questions asked. I could just say, I'm moving in, I want to live here, and that'd be it. And so that fortunately didn't happen, and I was able to live with my mom. But then at the end of my sophomore year of high school, third quarter or spring semester, which have you, my stepmother unfortunately passed away because of breast cancer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It happens. It's life.
Yep.
It is sad, but we get through. And so with that, my dad was living alone then in our family home, and I was living with my mom primarily during the school year and whatnot. And I'm like, I can't let my dad be alone in a house when my mom has her husband, and then there's me. I want to say I felt obligated, but it wasn't just that I was obligated. I just knew I needed to be there to support my dad. And
Yeah. You were concerned about his well-being.
right. And that was hard on my mom, but she understood. And it's not like I didn't see her, but there for a while, our relationship did get turbulent, if you will. There were things that would happen, like I would have a choir concert or something, and I just wouldn't tell her that it was happening. I think back on it now, and I'm like, I'm such a little shit, but my mom and I were butting heads, and we were just at a precarious place, and so that went on, and then so then through high school, I didn't really come out any further. I didn't tell my dad yet, even. I don't tell my dad until I am at college, my sophomore year at college, or junior year. I think it was my junior year, actually.
Really?
I waited that long, yeah.
So like a solid 4 years or so go by.
Oh, since I told my mom, it was at least 6.
6. I can do math.
So it was a good 6 years. So when I went to undergrad, where we went, I was out on campus pretty much from the get-go. Like, I joined the queer organization on campus, and I didn't hide that I was gay on campus. And I was involved in a lot of things on campus. I was, again, involved in student government. I was involved in student organizations. I was in the band. I was in the choir at one point, and I did some play productions as well. So I was known around campus. I ended up going into residence life sophomore and junior year and so on. And so the impetus, though, for me coming out to my dad was so with being in residence life, I came to the level of a head resident, if you will, and I was overseeing an entire residence hall with some support of resident assistants and a couple other halls on campus. And so through the nomination process for homecoming, I ended up on court for being nominated by my queer organization that I was the president of at that time. And so with that, and it would be then known if anybody came to the game that JoJo is representing the queer organization for homecoming as part of court. And so my dad, I obviously told, hey, I'm going to be at this event. And so I had to preemptively, a few weeks prior to that, be like, I'm gay. And so what I did was I didn't have a conversation with him. I wrote him a note. I wrote him a letter writing out, I'm gay, blah, blah, blah. I'm an adult. Like, I needed some self-preservation in that letter. And I don't know what my dad's done with it since, but I would actually be curious if he kept it or has held on to it. But the next day after he had time to read it, because we had gone out to a banquet, and then I dropped the letter off at his house after the banquet when I knew he wasn't going to be home, and I went to my mom's house for the night. That next day, I get a text message from him saying, I read your letter, I love you, and it doesn't matter, which that strengthened my dad and my relationship.
Yeah, your dad's a man of few words, and they
yes.
were all powerful words.
Yeah, and so me living with my dad for those years after his wife passed away, my stepmother, and then that me coming out has really brought my dad and I closer. Like, I will say in the era of Trump, our ideologies clash a bit, and it has made us a little bit butt heads a little bit more, but there's still a lot of recognition between us
Yeah.
for each other. So came out to my dad, and then after that, it was pretty much everybody. I held no bars at that point. My mom had one request, though, that since my grandfather was still alive at that point on her side, to not come out to him or not to tell him or bring up the subject to him, just because my mom didn't want to cause that type of stress.
Right.
Whatever. So I complied, but I wasn't happy about it. But I'm like, okay. And so I would say did put a bit of a strain on my mom's and my relationship for a while.
Yeah.
Just because parents have their own coming out journey as well once they know that their child is gay. And so my mom's has been a bit challenging from the start because she's the religious one of my parents. My dad's fairly agnostic, even though he's pretty conservative. But my mom is moderate, but very religious. So it was harder on her with the coming out. And so she didn't want to impact her dad, and I get that. But recently she's been better. She actually bought me Pride socks from Bombas this year.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
That was very kind of her.
Yeah, she bought it for me during Pride season to get to my house for Pride.
Right.
Which was touching because that's the first time that she's actively gone out, to my knowledge, to support an initiative for for queer rights. So.
And I'm sure like it was just a small little gesture that made like a big impact on you.
Right. Like I told my partners about it. I'm like, this is a big step forward for my mom. Like, this isn't normal for her.
Real quick, I know that we're talking about like your coming out story. I want to ask like the whole like living in rural Ohio and like before the age that we live in now, like we see football players and other professional sports players like coming out, and like now it's not such a big deal. But when you were playing football in high school, did people know? Did they treat you differently? Like, what was that experience like?
Right. So in high school playing football, it was an impact. The guys that were a year ahead of me were assholes. The guys 2 years ahead of me were okay, but the guys 1 year ahead of me and 2 years ahead of me were assholes. The guys 3 years ahead of me were fine, and like they were the class with the guy that I hooked up with my freshman year, and they were pretty much fine with him as well. Like they were pretty low key.
So he was on the football team too?
No, but he was in sports. He played basketball and baseball, and like that class was very close knit, very similar to my class. Sorry about that, being close knit. Like there are some classes that I feel are just more close knit, and fortunately my class was.
Oh, really quick, I want to put it into perspective. How big was your high school? What was the population?
My graduating class was 48 students.
48 students.
Yes.
So an average
with a 99% graduation rate.
That's pretty good. But
one person didn't.
You want to say that your high school was about 200 students through all the years that you were there?
Yeah. I knew I could name people in pretty much every grade, plus or minus 6 years.
Yeah. Like everyone knew everyone.
Pretty much. We were a small town, 1,500 people.
Okay.
And I lived in the country right outside of that. And so not a lot of people.
Yeah. So anyway, football.
So those guys were obviously assholes. They were dicks. And they made it a point to make practice harder for me than they would the other guys. And I looked to that because while I put in a lot of work from my junior to senior year in the summer, it was a bit different because I realized they weren't intentionally like throwing passes and as hard as they can for me compared to to the other guys.
So they
And-
treated you differently.
Oh yeah,
on the field.
I'm looking back at like doing routes and everything, and doing practice and doing those things. They would intentionally do things that could be considered like not blatantly obvious, but were to make it harder for me, which made my performance that much weaker. Because once I became a senior, I started all 11 games, not having played a single full game any of the years prior. And like I'll admit I worked my ass off a bit in that summer, but there was also a level of respect that the guys below me had. Like I was good friends with the class right below me, and them not intentionally going out of their way to make my practice harder. But when I was a senior, I still wasn't out to many people. Like I had told just my 2 girlfriends in high school, and they had let it slip a little bit, but it still wasn't known fact at that point.
Yeah.
But I remember vividly after a scrimmage at one of the games, we were eating hot dogs in the locker room because that's what was the meal provided after the game. And one of the guys in my class is like, hey, does me eating this hot dog turn you on? And I'm like, fuck you, no. And like, he then later apologized to me, like, after we were done in the locker room. But no one laughed, and, like, people just, like, deadpanned and was like, really, that's what you're going to say right now when we're in the locker room? Like, I was a senior, he was a classmate, and he realized what he did was stupid right afterwards. And everybody there, like, yeah, some of them might be a little bit judgy for it to me for being gay, but for the most part, everybody's like, can we move beyond this? Like that,
Can we grow up a little bit?
Right. At that point, and that would have been fall of 10. And so that you can see it was becoming a bit more progressive. I mean, Obama had been in now for 2 years. DATT was being repealed or going to be repealed soon. So like there was just movement in like public perception of, okay, being gay isn't as big of a deal.
Right.
So yeah, it was a bit problematic in the earlier years, but by the time I was a senior, I was on the team. I was a starter. I was respected, and people valued me. I mean, I was an asset to the team.
That's awesome. I think that's like way better of a story than what you would probably see in like a movie or told in a book, because, you know, the typical thing was like being bullied because you're different, and like, you know, you'll see in other plays, books, movies that happens.
The queer trope.
Yeah.
Of the gay person always has to suffer.
Yeah.
That is the trope. Fortunately, and I don't know if you've seen it yet, the show on Netflix, Sex Education.
I have not.
I would highly encourage watching it because it tackles and goes into several of these subject areas with a lot. It crosses a lot of subject areas, but they flip some of these tropes on their head, and like they show the potential for that trope, but then they don't go there. They discuss in an African country needing escape routes from a queer space in case it did become busted, but they didn't go there and show that it was busted, that no one got hurt. They showed the reality of the situation, but they didn't show the actual violence. There's not always going to be violence, and I think that is a damage that has happened in media, that queer individuals always have to face hardship.
Yeah.
Which isn't the case. And
Right.
while it's good to have queer or gay leads, it doesn't do a good service if they are always ending in tragedy. We need happiness. And there are so many stories out there of queer happiness. It's just, it doesn't quite sell to mainstream audiences.
Yeah, real quick, speaking of like TV shows and showing this hardship for anyone who's gay or part of that community, did you watch Schitt's Creek?
Yes, I did.
Yes.
I love Schitt's Creek.
It's fantastic. I love the way that they just have David be himself, and he's gay, and everyone's accepting of it, and it's like a small like hillbilly town, but like no one cares, and he's just normal. And so is, I can't remember his partner's name, but his partner, and like everyone loves him. I think it's great. Patrick, yes.
So
fantastic show.
I think the idea for sex education, with not going there with having to have that queer tragedy, stems from Schitt's Creek a little bit, because Schitt's Creek was one of the first to show that the queer story through David and Patrick, without having it have to go to tragedy. Like, they brushed it, they talk about some things, but they didn't go there. It truly did show a happiness that can be found even in queer relationships.
Yeah. And it's just normal.
Right. A relationship is normal.
Yeah.
However you define your relationship.
Right. Exactly. But yeah, I think it's interesting, like, how you grow up, and like it's awesome that you didn't have hardships. And then from my viewpoint in college, I met you my freshman year. You're a year older than I am.
Year.
And like, you are one of the biggest people on campus. Everyone
I
knows
was not.
you.
Okay,
in my eyes, you were. Everyone knew you.
Everyone knew me, but that was because I was involved on campus. Like, I was in the band, I was in the choir, I made myself be known. I was part of the first class of senators for the newly constructed government of the student body. So I was in the inaugural class. I wrote the Dragon Code, which was like the governing documents for the student government, and how we would work with student organizations on funding and allocation of funds and everything like that, and just how we would represent the student body through being the student government. That was truly what we were trying to formulate, is a formal process to give students a legitimate voice to the school and to the school staff. And I think it worked for a bit, at least. I don't know the current situation.
I don't either.
But for my time there, I feel like I did get a lot accomplished. I had agenda items that I wanted to push, and I think I got a fair bit of them done. And I think that was a success, because I'm pretty sure if that government's still standing, it's standing with documentation from me still being there. And I think we can see that or discuss that even within the fraternity, but because I crossed when I was a junior, you were a sophomore, so
yes, I've spoken about fraternity life in the first 2 episodes, and yes, everyone who's listening, there is another episode with another person who is Greek. I love this person to death. I love everyone who is visited to death, so please don't hate on Greek people.
With the bad stories that are out there for Greek life, there are also some very positive stories about finding a chosen family, because Cameron, I do consider you my brother. Like, you are my chosen family.
Absolutely. And the same to you.
Thank you. But with that, so inside of it, there are governing documents, and we were last standing chapter on a college campus for several years. Yeah. And we had lost contact with our national organization and our alumni chapters, and because of that, I wasn't aware of our documentation. So I talked about how are we formalizing ourselves? How do we make sure that we have a documentation to keep ourselves moving forward, and have a way to operate within the student government that we have to adhere to, as well as also the standards set by our national organization. And so I tried doing research on what our documentation was. I was getting nowhere, or I was actually getting pushback from people who were part of the national organization on saying, oh, you can't do that. Oh, we have that, but not providing it to me. So I think you and I spent some time actually working on documentation, so that way there would be something there that would be lasting for the active chapter at our alma mater.
Yeah, we did. That was quite the experience.
I learned my love of policy writing from parts of that.
Yeah.
Which is why I enjoy what I do, because I do see my end trajectory being writing policy. Like, my end goal is to earn my PhD and then become a professor and work with legislators on doing research behind what will this policy implementation mean for the people that it'll affect. What are the outcomes? What will that actually mean for the people once it's enacted? So that's really where I see myself going. Fortunately, I think I'm on the right path. I'm a data analyst for a collection of regional governments here in Central Ohio. So
now, with the writing of the policy for the student government,
yes,
and like doing the documentation for the fraternity, is that kind of like where you're like it stemmed, where you're like, I love this? Is that where it all started, or is there something else?
So it comes from before that even. So, I mean, in high school, I was part of student government, which was I mean, comparatively to the other organizations that I was with, was a sham in a lot of ways. It was just students that were elected by the student body of their classes that did homecoming put together shit. So it was how high school staff got out of actually putting together the homecoming and put it on the students.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty commonplace for most schools, but we didn't have much authority outside of planning homecoming in high school. And then I went to Buckeye Boys State, which was a lot of fun. Got to be part of creating my own state and local government for Ohio with about, I think it was 1,500 or 3,000 students from across the state of Ohio, all engaging in it at BGSU at that time.
Was this like a summer camp thing?
So it was a week-long event that is put on by the American Legion. Several states have Boys State.
Okay.
And there is also Girls State as well. And it's, like I said, put on by the American Legion. And it is for students who show exceptional leadership and academics in high school, and their list of like 4 or 5 names are given to the American Legion with their accolades, and they then choose who gets to go and who gets to be an alternate or two for the event. And it's always it's a prestigious thing for the American Legion to send you to this, because it is a selection process. So that was one of my first like real inclinations of working in government, and that's something that can be done. And then I went to our alma mater, where I studied environmental sciences and got minors in government and leadership studies to get that government side, because I always envisioned myself working as the person between the hard sciences of environmentalism and just all the hard scientists, being able to have an understanding of it and communicate what those scientists' findings are and translate it into what does that mean for the people, and how does that affect the world that will need affected through policy, to talk to the policymakers about what the science is saying. So that's really where I see myself, and I continue to see myself there. But I do want to be involved in the policy writing aspect in the future, because having that understanding of what the science says and what the people need, I would like to be part of that process. I don't want to be a legislator, but be on staff or be brought in as a consultant to be like, this is what our objective is. How do we get there?
Awesome. So, so that was like your love. You found that out early on, and you actually have stuck with it, which is pretty awesome.
Looking back at it today, talking here, looking back at it, yeah, it's been over a decade of me having this passion for the mechanisms of government and understanding it and trying to be part of that that mechanism to provide a better world for our society. That's my ultimate goal, is just be part of the system that improves conditions for society.
That's awesome. And so you find this love and you do your thing at our alma mater, and you're like, all right, I'm gonna go to get a master's degree. And
So I got my master's degree at the Glenn University at Ohio State, or Glenn College, sorry, at the Ohio State University, for my MPA, Master's of Public Administration, where I did a focus on energy and environmental policy analysis. So, and after that, I then got a career in doing program evaluation, analysis of programs, and then I changed from that organization because there wasn't much of a growth opportunity, and I was very introductory level, and I wanted something closer to my home. I was driving over 20 minutes to work. Now I have a 10-minute bike ride.
yeah,
So I wanted to be closer to home for when I'm working. So I got this new job, and instead of being a research associate, I am now a data analyst. But it was a step up for me, and so it was with an organization that I can now see my steps forward to getting to where I want to be in the long run, and I'm excited for that journey that I'm about to go on.
that's awesome. So you're analyzing data. What data are you looking at right now? Like what are you seeing? What do you do?
There's a lot.
Yeah.
So over the summer, one of the big things that I was working on was an agenda dealing with sustainability and sustainability measures. And so I had to do a lot of research around about 30 different measures to track various aspects of sustainability for the area. And so with that, there were a lot of interesting findings.
So when you say sustainability, what does that mean?
Sustainability is the act or practice of reducing waste and emissions and being environmental and working to keep the space green or become greener in our applications within our economy, to make sure that we're able to have a bright, vibrant future for the region, for our children, with having green spaces, having breathable air, not having too much waste in a landfill, and other aspects like that. So that is sustainability. So within that, there are several measures that I could talk on. Interestingly, we had the change in administrations earlier this year. So a lot of these measures are tied to potential shifts in policy by the new administration. So one key being was we're tracking the number of electric vehicles that are part of the mix of vehicles here in Central Ohio. And so with that, I had to track the number of electric vehicles that have been bought over so many years, and then I have to project out what our goal is. And then right when I was trying to decide that, I hear of the administration's goal to have 50% of the new fleet by 2030 be all EV vehicles. So we had to play that into our projections and how we wanted to adjust and make a target for ourselves and for the region. Other one is one that I'm actually kind of proud of or more interested in was the energy cost burden, or how much money do households spend on their energy costs, and what threshold is considered burdensome for that for people. And so having to do a lot of digging on what that percentage is. And so we ended up coming to 5% of a person's income is the threshold for being cost burden. Whereas, say, for housing cost itself, it's 30% income. And so through some manipulation of some ACS data and some other sources with the BLS, we found or estimated over time the number of households, or percent of households rather, that are energy cost burden. And nowhere else have I seen that application or a method similar to that, or actually anywhere that actually talked about people spending X amount of their income on energy costs and it being cost burden. Typically when they're talking about cost burden, what they do is they look at a geography, whether it be a census block or census tract or zip code, and evaluate what is the mean or average energy cost burden for that geography. But that doesn't tell you how many people are actually affected by that energy cost, because you could have a high number of people with very low, but have a few that have extraordinarily high energy costs. While that's not realistic, there's a lot more room for variance when you look at it that way versus trying to estimate the actual number of people that are affected by energy costs. So that was an interesting one that I found there. Another area that I recently had to do a little bit of digging was on some economic development here, especially with us coming out of COVID and the income protection for people on unemployment. The unemployment insurance was going out, and so one of my tasks was to look at how many people are looking for jobs, how many job postings are there, and how many what's the balance of jobs and people needing jobs and jobs available. And so with that, the dialogue that we were trying to find was, there is a worker shortage. There are not enough workers for all of these positions. But when just looking at total number of jobs available and total number of people searching for jobs, that didn't line up. I could genuinely say there are less workers available for those jobs, but there are also less jobs available overall. The number was down at the time that I was looking at this about like 10% from January 2020 numbers, which that's more than the gap in the number of people that were looking for work compared to the same number of people looking for work at that time. So I could not say in good faith or at all that it's the number of workers that's the problem, because that was not true. It is true. It was at that time the number of jobs available. Now, if I were to play with some of the metrics inside of that, it was education level or education requirements for the job postings. And when we dissected it that way, jobs on the lower end that only needed no education or experience or some education or experience level, those jobs were experiencing higher demands or higher levels of actual job demand.
Now, can you say like what types of jobs these are?
So jobs like that, we can anecdotally say are manufacturing or warehouse jobs or those entry-level positions that are a bit more manual labor, to be fair. But I would not say or classify them as sales jobs or people that are at or working in retail spaces. They would be in warehouses or similar type of utility type of space like that.
Okay, sorry. And then keep going into like the higher level of education.
Yeah, and so as I said, those were for the lower and some education requirement. Now there's moderate level education, considerable and extensive education requirement or experience requirements. Now those were all down. And so we have this base of our economic pyramid with people needing job or employers needing workers in those lower skilled jobs, but upper skilled jobs weren't needed as much during this time. And part of what I was thinking is that a lot of the jobs that were lost during COVID were those retail middle jobs that do require a little bit of experience, moderate level of education or training. And so I think those were the jobs that were really lost, and those aren't coming back as fast as, say, the warehouses jobs. And those individuals, I mean, if I were to be a full-time retail employee, I don't know if I'd want a career shift from working sales or working in a department store or that type of work and working in a manufacturing or a or machining type shop or warehouse. That'd be a career shift. And I don't think a lot of people should be forced or expected to make a career shift like that if they think or want to go back into their field that they were working in prior to COVID.
Interesting. So I'm curious. I feel like other people will be curious. Where does this data come from? Like, how does it come across your desk? Like, how is it collected?
So a lot of our data we get from verified government sources like Bureau of Labor Statistics, Ohio Labor Market Information System, American Community Survey, and then there are a few university research departments and firms that produce data sets for consuming for free, and then they have like a pay tier where you get more granular, refined data at a higher level, and so on. And depending on what the goal or aspiration of the project is, we might go for those, or we might just use that free service of tracking certain smaller, less granular numbers.
Interesting. So this is like your main focus recently on like what you're looking at work?
It was recently, yes.
Okay.
Right now because I'm a data analyst, I'm working with another team member. One of the big projects right now is creating a data hub for the data that we produce, which are on like county projections on population, job growth, and just economic conditions and forecasting traffic pattern type stuff.
Oh, interesting. So like you're looking out like 5, 10, 15 years, like what it's looking like in this certain area.
Yeah, we go out right now. I'm working on the 2054 numbers.
Oh, wow.
We just a couple years ago posted the 2050 numbers, and so we're working on an update to that. And so it's a 30-year, and we're mandated to do this. Like it is part of our charter, if you will, why we are what we are, to do these forecasts, to do these projections for the region.
No, is this like available? Can I go out on Google and read this?
Yeah, you'd be more than able to go to our website and look it up. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I didn't know that. I'm very interested to read it now and see fruits of your labor.
I can show you some of these documents once we're done here.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd love to see it and see like what it looks like for Ewell, Ohio here in 20, 30 years.
Well, I mean, we're expected to grow in population by 2050 to 3 million.
In Greater Columbus area.
Yes. And we are at right now about 1.2 to 1.3, I think.
Okay. So
in 30
over
years,
double.
we double.
Yeah. And now, correct me if I'm wrong. I saw this stat, I think a couple of years ago, that we have a higher population here in Greater Columbus area than San Francisco does in Greater San Francisco area. Do you know that?
So
true?
Our metro area, or our metro area, is bigger than their metro area.
Okay.
Yes. But the city of which city was it? Sorry.
San Francisco, I think.
The city of San Francisco is more populated than the city of Columbus.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So metro area is different than jurisdictional area.
Right. And they have way more going on over there than we do.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's West Coast. We're flyover country almost.
Yeah. Hey, we're growing. We got some things going on.
We have a few.
Yeah.
So yeah, with my work, that's what I do for work. I really enjoy it. but I have other goals. I have other aspirations, and I really want to get back into doing more research. That is part of my passion and goal, is to do more research again, which I do think is a possibility and a strong thing that's going to be coming for me soon.
Awesome. I don't know if me personally I could sit and research something for 8 hours a day. I feel like I'd get tired of it, but it's awesome that you can sit there and do it.
So my thing is, I do this research because I don't want to just diagnose a problem. That a lot of research in academia, in the organizations that I work with, they always are talking about what is the current problem, what is currently going on, and a lot of times I don't hear the solution. And that's what I want to be part of my research and part of my ambition is, yes, do research to have an understanding of what's going on, but that research shouldn't just end with identifying the problem. It needs to always go to the next step of identifying solutions. And there might not always be a solution that exactly fixes your problem, and there isn't always going to be a solution out there that has fixed similar problems. But we need to at least look for them and identify, okay, that's sort of in the same area, or that's sort of similar to this problem that I'm facing. How can I adapt that? How can I work that into my area here to actually provide a solution? Or what ingenuity do I have? What imagination do I have to actually come up with a potential solution that's actually accomplishable? And that's what I think is missing a lot, is the how. How do we get there? And we need more people that are actually willing to say, this is the issue, we've identified it, now we need to solve it. People like to sit and spin wheels and say, this is the problem, and just stay there.
Yeah. We need more people to find more solutions. That's pretty cool. So, what's like what's maybe to you, but like maybe general, what's like the burnout rate here in your field? Do you get tired frequently, or do you love like you could work this every day of the week? And
fuck no. No, I love what I do. I don't want that to not be apparent. I love what I do, but my work is work. It is tiring. It is exhaustive. I don't want to do it every day, all day. Like I have other things that I want to do with my life.
Yeah.
But I do love what I do. It's just, as you said, sitting there day after day for 8 hours doing research or doing studies or looking into things, it does get tiring. It does get exhaustive because I'm seeing the same things and I feel like there's no one's moving on them. So there is a bit of burnout, I would say. But typically, especially in public sector, people are in it because they want to help. They want to be part of the solution. They want to be doing something to better the community. And so I think because of that alone, people don't just leave the industry unless there is truly something managerial side that's causing them issue.
So it's more environment rather than work.
Yeah, and I think outside of the government part of public sector, there is a understanding of we're all people, we all have lives, and we all have things going on in our lives, and life happens. So there is that level of accepting and understanding that something's going to come up, and you can take and do what you need to do to make sure that you can come to work the next day and be fully functioning.
Yeah. I ask because I find your job, your work very interesting, and I love hearing about it. And in my eyes, it's not something that is like looked at as like, I guess, the hero job, the favorite.
No.
I just think it's so cool though.
My aspiration has always been to be the person behind the scenes doing work to help someone else along the journey, to be the support, to be the person to, I don't want the accolades. I want to help just solve the problem and be there. And so that's my job, is I'm behind the scenes. I am doing the work to make things better on the front.
Yeah.
So that's I enjoy it, and it is in the shadows. It's not the hero's job. But I don't want the hero's job.
Yeah.
I want to support them. I want to be the Alfred, if you will.
Yeah. Like Batman's Alfred. It took me a second
Right.
to
Yeah. Sorry.
connect that dot.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I want to be like Alfred for Batman. Like,
Yeah.
I'll be there with the glass of water and the aspirin.
Yeah.
I'll clean up and make sure that everything's pressed and cleaned.
Yep. Yeah, that's cool. I'm very, I don't know. I'm always excited to hear what you have to say and like what you're seeing. And like, I'm not really a news person. I don't follow the news all day, every day.
I do.
You kind of have to.
I have to be aware of current events. And,
Yeah.
I mean, right now, the infrastructure plan, I mean, that will directly impact my job. Like, that'll affect the funding that we get and what projects we can and can't do and where we can and can't advocate for moving things forward in our area.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, I just always find it so cool to hear what's going on over in the background.
A lot of moving parts.
Lots. Yeah, so I want to know, like, you don't want to do work all the time. So
No.
what's your hobbies? What do you enjoy doing?
Fuck. Well, fucking is one. But no, so I haven't had a lot of leisure time lately. I have a part-time job. I do work part-time at a clothing retail shop for a pretty queer organization. We sell men's underwear, we sell leather goods, we sell club wear and going out wear and what have you, and other fun items, I'll say, for right now. And so like that takes up a lot of my time. And then I have a very good chosen family. I am open and I am polyamorous. I have 2 partners. They keep me very occupied with time. And then going and doing events with them, going to the bars, seeing friends, that type of stuff, dancing and just enjoying myself and having a good time, going to events and traveling a bit across the country. Like earlier this summer, I went to Yosemite and went to Monterey out in California. Those were both very fun. I was with my partners. We had a couple friends join us for the trip. And if I hadn't seen California, that was my first trip out there, and I've really enjoyed it. I'm excited to go back to San Francisco and see all that has to offer again.
Yeah. Two things I want to touch
Please.
on. First, another taboo subject. You mentioned a polyamorous relationship.
Yes.
How is that? What goes on? It's, it's still more taboo than being
a fucking fag?
I wasn't going to say that.
I can call myself that. I am only calling myself that.
Yeah. I was going to say LGBTQ plus all the letters.
Right. The alphabet soup.
Yes. Them alphabets, people.
Easy. So what do you want to know? Like, I can answer your questions. We can go down the path that you want to go down with that.
So I don't know. Like, what's it like? Do you feel like you're subject to be with one person, or like both of them, or like you guys just?
So the 3 of us live together. We share a house. We cohabitate. We are always doing stuff together. But we also have our space. Like, I'm very reliant on them, and I feel like they're very reliant on me. Like, we are set in our ways a lot, and we, like, during the week, we each trade off who's cooking and then who cleans the dishes, and then we sit down at the end of the night. We have our couch and we watch a TV show or 2, and then we go to bed. It's pretty blasé. I feel like it's fairly stereotypical of a relationship. It's just there's 3 of us, not 2.
Yeah, it sounds like, to me, it sounds like it's a typical relationship. Instead of 2, there's 3.
Right.
So there's nothing, like, I guess, really outstanding that would be, I don't know, an outlier of a situation. It's just 3 people.
Now, the thing that we have to add to this is that we're also open. And inside of that, we're kinksters, we're BDSM, we're fetishists. So we also play in that world. And because we're open and we're polyamorous, we do lend ourselves to being involved in the leather community, BDSM. And so we do have other partners outside of the 3 of us as well that we do stuff with and engage, and we have our one-on-one time, or we have our various relationships with our very close friends. And that's how I would they are more than friends, but they're our family, but they're also our best friends as well, that we enjoy spending time with and bring into our lives and have understandings with. These are my 2 boyfriends. These are my people that I want to spend the rest of my life with. I want to go on our amazing adventures that we go on and see the world and experience with. But we don't limit ourselves to saying that we can't have our other friends in various types of dynamics or relationships with ourselves. And that never takes away from our actual relationship with each other. It only adds to, or it builds with, our relationship. And the 3 of us, we are our quote unquote primary. We value each other first, and then our secondary relationships, our best friends, our family, we value them, and we build out how we can within our relationship, those relationships.
So, like, I'm just trying to think here. Like, you would say maybe that, like, the whole intimate time is not, like, as sacred as a 2-person relationship in the typical sense.
So what define what you mean by that?
Like, where we're in a 2-person relationship, they would say, like, you know, when we're intimate with each other. Anything else is considered cheating.
Yeah, no. So and it's different among other polyamorous or other open people, but for us, we don't really have physical cheating. You could have emotional cheating. That is a potential, but we base a lot of it all off of our ability to communicate with each other and just tell each other how we're feeling and what our feelings for each other are, or what our feelings are for our friends that we include in our family. And so it's just being able to talk to each other about, this is what I'm currently feeling, this is what's going on, this is what I want to see happen, and this is what I don't want to see happen. It's all about being able to communicate wants and desires. And for the 3 of us, we're able to do that with each other without, I don't want to say without jealousy, because jealousy is going to be real and going to be part of it, but we don't let that jealousy consume us, and don't let it become a wedge between us. Often we're the 3 of us are very open about our interactions, and we don't coddle our friends when we're like, we have a little tiff of, oh, you forgot to take out the trash, like little things like that. We always try to be genuine. And so I laugh because some of our friends are like, that is so just organic and so refreshing that you guys are in your relationship and you're not trying to coddle your friends. You're just being open and being genuinely ourselves. And those tits or tats, if you will, only last for the 5-10 minutes of, oh, you forgot to take out the trash when I asked you earlier to do it, type of thing. Mm-hmm. It doesn't last. It doesn't persist. It doesn't prolong. And we talk about it then later and we get over it. It's always about having that line of communication and being open and just talking about how we feel. Like that's the impetus of the relationship. That is what makes the relationship strong or able to last as it has.
So the advice you would give here is open communication.
Communication. Yeah. Fucking talk to each other.
Yeah.
Or at least know each other well enough to know nonverbal cues of each other. Like,
Yeah.
be able to be like, oh, that bothered them. I need to correct or fix, or I need to go check on, or I need to be there for them, and vice versa.
Would you say that part of a relationship is more difficult having two other people, or would you say it is easier where you can all just communicate?
I do think it's easier because it's not me versus you. It's not me versus them. We're all able to have and do have our own opinions, and we can openly discuss them. And really, we allow for each other to say, hey, so our other partner had a good point there. You kind of messed up. Or I'm able to take it and be like, yeah, I realized you two were right. Or, hey, you weren't right on this one. We're able to acknowledge that, and we're not coming from a place of hostility, or we're not coming from a place of trying to get each other. We're just trying to figure out, and we're trying to live our lives and have adventures and just enjoy our time.
So if someone were to like come up to you and be like, JoJo, I think your idea of polyamorous relationship is stupid. It's irresponsible. It's very taboo. Like, what would you say to that person?
Okay. You don't live my life. You don't pay my bills. I'm happy. I'm content. I am enjoying myself. I'm living a life that I am happy with. I'm having fun.
I love it. That's the best advice, I think. Yeah. It's my life. It's not yours, right?
Right. It's my life. I'm having fun. I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not harming anybody. I'm trying to be productive and have my fun along the way.
Yeah.
Like, I think the point of life is simply to enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's the question of like, what is happiness? What's the meaning of life? And I think you're kind of hitting on it here that it's yours.
Yes, it is 100% yours. Like, my definition for happiness is different than yours.
Yeah.
And what brings you joy, I don't, there are so many things that can bring you joy, but find yours and enjoy it. Don't let other people talk down to you for it. As long as you're not harming anybody else, you're not harming yourself, and you're able to function, go for it.
Yeah, I love it. That's awesome. So next I wanted to bring up travel. I always talk to people about their travels.
I do enjoy travel.
Yes. You love travel. I love travel. I want to hear all about it. You went to Yosemite. You've been many other cool places that I have not been yet. I want to hear about it.
So let's start with some of the early trips. So when I was in like middle school, I went to Canada with my mom and stepfather to the Canadian Rockies. All I'll say is, ooh, look, there's a mountain on your right. Ooh, look, there's a mountain on your left. I was in middle school. Okay.
You were that asshole.
don't take a middle schooler to the fucking mountains. There was nothing there besides mountains and hiking. Like, don't get me wrong. Looking back at it now, it was very cool. It was very nice. It was very pretty. They were fucking mountains.
I'll tell you what.
They're cool, but 5 or 6 days of being in the mountains with your parents when you're in middle school wasn't the ideal vacation.
Right.
There were no other kids. There were no other things going on. Just us in a car in the mountains seeing pretty things.
I'll tell you, my happiness is mountains.
Oh, I get it. And I think had I been a bit older, I've been with friends versus myself.
Right.
I think the experience would have been a little bit different. But I was a kid in middle school with my parents.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've done a bit of traveling to St. Louis, baseball games for the Cardinals. Always enjoyed that. Done Florida a few times. Done consciously. I've only been to Universal and Islands Adventure. When I was really young, I did Disney down there, but I couldn't tell you anything about it.
Yeah.
That so long ago, so young. But then in high school, I went to Europe for part of my Spanish club trip. It was 11 days, 7 countries,
Wow.
10 cities.
Wow. That is nonstop.
Yeah, it was a lot. But it was a lot of fun. I saw Spain, France, and Italy primarily, and Rome and the Vatican, and saw Nice, which was nice.
What was your favorite part about that trip?
So that's where I first bought cigars. That was the first experience of me buying cigars, were Cuban cigars in Italy.
Ooh, fancy.
Right. Like, I thought to myself, like, I grew up on Lake Erie fishing every other weekend with my dad, and some of the other guys would be smoking cigars down the docks, and I'd shoot the shit with them as a little know-it-all brat, and just learned about the world from them, and they would smoke cigars, and I always thought the smell was great, and so that's where I bought my first real cigar. I'm like, if I'm gonna smoke a cigar ever, I'm gonna make it a Cuban, and it's gonna be good. Well, that's where my love of cigars has started. Then in undergrad, I started getting good cigars that I could legally, Honduran cigars and Nicaraguan and what have you cigars. And then I took a little bit of a hiatus for a minute and just life and everything, but now smoking a cigar every so often, smoking a cigar with you every so often. So that was from the Europe trip. So I vividly remember going in there and being like, saying 3 cigars. And they picked the 3 out and they just handed them to me, and I handed them the cash, and that was that.
That was like the best part.
Right.
I
don't remember much else. I just remember the square that I was in and buying cigars.
Awesome.
And then we went on our trip to the Bahamas.
Not us. Not you and me. Or yes, we did.
Yes,
oh my God,
we did. I'm like, bitch.
I was like, wait, we went on a trip specifically to the Bahamas? No, we didn't.
Yes.
Yeah, we went on a cruise.
We went on a cruise to the Bahamas. For your graduation. Sorry.
Yeah. There was a couple other people there too.
Yeah, your cousin.
Yeah.
So that was another trip. That was fun. I think we could have had more fun had certain individuals not been there.
Agreed.
I think you and I need to do a trip.
We've talked about it.
We have.
We've never actually made concrete plans to do so.
We both live. It's hard.
Yeah.
To do.
We live weird lives.
For us to get tonight even in the books, it's like, hey, what are you doing that day? That'll work.
Yeah. Yeah, for us to get together for a trip, it might take some planning, but we should do it.
I agree, and I think we're both coming more to parts of our lives where we can.
Yes,
now. We're getting more settled
absolutely.
in. I think we have those options more. So we did the Bahamas. We bought those fake Cubans.
Yep.
Boo.
Stop selling fake Cubans.
Yes.
Assholes.
Buyers beware.
Yes.
But then that was the summer before I went to grad school, because I went to grad school that following January, because we went on that trip in the summer.
Yeah.
And so that following spring semester is when I started my graduate program. And so then I didn't do any traveling for 2-3 years. At the end of that program is when I met my partners at that time, and started to then travel after about 3 years, traveling to Atlanta, to Fort Lauderdale area for Pride, or just for a small vacation away from everything. And then in the last couple 2-3 years, including COVID, unfortunately, I've done a couple other trips. Went to Vancouver, British Columbia. That, if you ever get the chance, I would highly encourage going up to Vancouver. It very pretty, walkable city. It's just really cool atmosphere. I really enjoyed it. I was there for their Pride, but it was a fun time outside of that too.
Yeah.
And then this past summer, went to Yosemite, San Francisco, and Monterey. Sorry.
Yeah.
And so that was a fun trip. About 10 of us, close friends. We had all been vaccinated at that point, and we're all abiding by all mask mandates and everything that we could, and just had a really good time hiking in the national parks and the other state parks for the redwoods and everything that they have out there. And it's just a really enjoyable time. And there weren't a lot of people, fortunately, because still had COVID restrictions. And so being one with nature was a lot of fun there. And so I'd be excited to go back and see those forests again.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, at that time, I had twisted my ankle, so I wasn't able to go on as many full hikes as I had wanted to at that time. But it was enjoyable what I did get to see.
It's another reason to go back.
Right.
Yeah, it's a place I haven't been. I'm very excited to go at some point.
One I want to do is I want to do Yellowstone. That's one that's on my list.
Yeah.
To do.
I was out there in March. I don't know if I told you about it, but yeah, I was out there in March, and it was still like Yellowstone was closed. I saw it from afar, but I was at the Tetons, so they're right beside each other, and it was still 10 degrees outside, 6 feet of snow on the ground. Like, it was, to me, it was incredible.
I would not enjoy that. I do not like the cold.
I'm a nerd about the cold and the snow and all that stuff, but anyway. Yeah, Yellowstone, definitely on the list of places to go.
I also want to go out to Death Valley.
Yeah.
For in the United States, and the Grand Canyon. I do want to see the Grand Canyon. Now, internationally, some of the places that I do want to see is I want to see Egypt. I want to see parts of Israel. I want to see Greece. And then I would like to probably see Japan and maybe China. But definitely the Middle East. Those two places would be high on my list.
My episode before this one, you should check it out. The guest talks about his life and living in Israel for a short period of time.
Oh, yes. Cool.
Gets to talk about all the cool stuff, all the travels. It's a cool ride. It definitely made me want to go.
Yeah. So, I mean, just the cultural experience of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a thing for ancient civilizations, so I want to see the Egyptians, the Karnak and Luxor and the pyramids and the Sphinx and the Valley of the Kings. But then I also want to go down to Mexico, and I want to see the Aztecs and the Mayans and the Inca, in those as well. And I mean, here in Central Ohio, we have the earthworks as well that I enjoy going to see. And like, I've done Serpent Mound, which it's cool. Bit of a underwhelming experience, but it's still something that I enjoyed doing.
I feel like it's something you kind of have to see from above.
Yeah, it would be more visually stimulating from above. It's like the Nazca Lions a bit.
Yeah. Funny enough, I like grew up close to where that's at,
and
I didn't even know about it until like 2 or 3 years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
But don't know what's in your own backyard.
Exactly. I want to go to that and see it at some point. I know it's a short day trip.
We can make a day trip of it.
Yeah. And it's never just something I think about doing on like a Saturday and going and seeing and coming home. Like, I don't know.
Let's plan it. We'll do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
We should plan it on like an equinox or on a solstice, because some of it does have alignments.
Oh, let's do that. That sounds like fun.
We're not doing it in the winter though. We're not doing it in December.
Lame.
Cold.
Get a jacket.
Fine. We'll get it. We'll get something worked out.
So you mentioned that you've traveled for quite a few prides. Like,
Yes.
What describe to me like what it's like for that person who's like, I want to go to Pride, but I'm not out yet, or like I just came out and like I want to go and experience this. Like, what's that like?
So the first Pride I ever went to was that Toledo Pride? I went to Toledo Pride, small, tiny Pride.
Yeah.
And I just went for the Pride Parade at that point. I was in undergrad. It was my sophomore year. I went with a couple of friends from college, and we did the festival. We walked around the booths. We saw the parade, but we didn't do any of the bars or any of the like actual events. But for me, that was all that I wanted. Like, I wanted to see the pride, if you will.
Yeah.
And then I started doing a few other prides, and I went to Columbus Pride. I then went to Cincinnati Pride. And again, those were all just, I went for the parade and the festival. I didn't go and do bar nights. But once I started traveling, I was with my partners. My partners are both a little bit older than me. The one is 6 years older than me. The other's 15 years older than me. And so a bit more experience, know a bit more about gay culture. And they took me out to the bars, and I trust them, obviously. And so they took me to the bars, and that's where I really started having fun. And I wouldn't have gone to the bars unless I had a friend or friends to go with me. Like, I enjoy socializing. I enjoy being out, but those types of spaces, I do want and need other people there that I know, because I'm not good at just engaging with random individuals. I like having my group of people that I can have fun with and enjoy and dance and just have fun with for the evening, and make sure we're looking out for each other and make sure nothing bad happens to each other.
So like what's it like not just a bar scene, but like what's it like in all the other events of Pride? What happens?
So, I mean, there's a lot that happens. I mean, it's a week of festivities and activities. I mean, local organizations like here in Columbus is our Stonewall Columbus puts on charitable events. There's more events happening with like youth drop-in centers and everything there that are just, they're either trying to get more support or funding, or they're just trying to show off themselves and show that they are Pride or part of the queer community here. So there's always events going on, charity events. There's often softball tournaments or drag softball, or there's various things. And each community is a little bit different. Like when I went up to Vancouver, they had the International Fireworks Competition in their bay that week of Pride. It wasn't part of Pride, but they always timed it up to be the same week. And the gays just adopted as part of the festivities. So there would be thousands of people lining the beaches and the shorelines of the water and watch these 20-30 minute fireworks shows go off by 3 or 4 different nations in the bay. And then there would be DJs playing music at various bars, and they would have themes and everything else. And the theme nights are fun. Get to wear your leather harness, your other accoutrements, and just get to show off, show the world your pride.
So you just get to be you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have
you get to be authentically you.
Yeah, you don't have to conform to anything.
It's Pride. Fuck norms.
I love it. I've been to Pride like once. And it was after the parade, and I was just like walking around downtown Columbus, nothing crazy.
Right.
It was cool. It was cool seeing everyone. being themselves and having a good time and all that. Like, I literally just went because I was like, I just want to see it. And, like, I want to go have dinner down there. So, yeah, it's cool. So I want to ask, like, I want to take a darker turn, I
Okay.
guess. Um, so fantastic that you didn't have to like face much adversity, like coming out, and like there was a little bit, but like it wasn't anything crazy.
Right.
Was there any other like demons that you battled like growing up, or like anything else? Like, did you have to deal with like anxiety or being like casted out as like a loner or anything?
So, I mean, I do have anxiety. I think I do have borderline depression. And I've recently been diagnosed with ADHD. So like there are things in my life that I've realized that were more challenging or difficult, or made my life more challenging or difficult. Because when I was like preceding all of that, uh, in elementary school, early elementary school, I was diagnosed with like a reading disability, something similar to dyslexia. And so I always was fighting that, but I was never a loner or an outcast. I, I always had a small group of friends. I wouldn't say I was the most popular. I definitely was not, but I had 2 or 3 close friends, and then a group of about 10 or so of good friends that I would actively engage with. But being in a class of 48 graduating, you couldn't really have many people that were outcasts, if you will. Like,
Yeah.
we were a fairly close-knit group of people. And fortunately, my 2 really good friends in high school, especially once we were sophomores and freshmen, once we were sophomores and juniors, we got to be really good friends. And like my one friend had a brother a year below her in school, and I got to be good friends with him and his friends. And so there was just a really good group of us that would always hang out. But back to the anxiety and depression and ADHD. So I think a lot of that stems from my reading disability that I had growing up. And I I think it was partially a misdiagnosis, or that it was just something that wasn't fully understood for me. Um, but fortunately, I was able to test out of it once I got into high school. But it was still something that nagged or persisted. Like, there was still a certain level of, I do struggle with reading. It takes me longer than normal people to read something. I will reread paragraphs or sentences or lines on a page 2-3 times without realizing that, oh, my eyes aren't tracking and I'm not catching that I'm not moving down the page. So there are things in my life that I've had to work or overcome, such as that. But I still got my master's degree. I'm still planning to go for a PhD. I'm still doing stuff. I just have to learn coping mechanisms and learn to grow and adapt from it.
Yeah. With the reading, was there like any comprehension issues? Did you have to read things like multiple times? You're like, I don't even realize what I just read.
So when I am reading, like, I will comprehend it. I will absorb everything. It's just my eyes won't always understand that I've read that already and know to track to the next line. So I'll read the sentence, that first line or first two lines over and over. My brain will comprehend that I've understood it, but my eyes won't get the signal to keep going, to keep tracking down the page for other bits of information.
Interesting. And now you've dealt with that for many years.
All my life, really.
Yeah. And it still affects you today.
When I'm reading documents at work, there will be times where I'm like, you read that paragraph already. Move on. Like, I have to consciously be thinking about how I'm reading.
Yeah. Interesting. And now that Now, I feel like that is probably an explanation on how you're having anxiety is like, oh, I have to make that conscious decision that I've done this already. I have to move on. Like, am I right in saying that, or is there something else?
So I think the anxiety with that, I mean, being a queer individual, anxiety stems from that. With the reading disability, I think a bit of my anxiety comes from, like I said, being queer, but also having imposter syndrome. Because I have that reading disability and I've achieved where I've gotten, there's sometimes this disillusionment that if I have this or have had this diagnosis before, how am I achieving what I'm achieving? And that's probably because I've learned coping mechanisms. I've grown, or I've learned ways around those obstacles that impede me. The depression, I think, is just a stem from anxiety, from queer challenges and facing community challenges as part of my job and just seeing the world around us. I think going through COVID has really highlighted some of those issues for individuals and then society at large, that there are problems in our society and community that are affecting people's mental state. And it's okay to talk about it now. It's becoming more accepted to be like, I'm not having a good mental day. Like, I've actually had to tell people, I don't have the mental energy to have this conversation with you today. Please message me tomorrow or the next day and we can have that conversation.
Yeah.
Just because I don't have that energy at that time. And I think that's great progress for our community or society to be able to say, I value your time. I can't have this right now. I'm not ready for it. Just type of simple, I understand, but I need a little bit of time for it.
Yeah. I just want to say really quick, I understand that you face those challenges, and I want to say, looking at you, like, knowing you, I don't feel like you, I guess, forecast those outward. Like, you hold it in not in like a negative way, right? Like, I know you cope and all that, but it's not something that I see on the outside that, like, shit, Ethan is depressed today. Like, yeah, well, I don't see it. I know I probably didn't do a great job describing what I'm trying to say, but I feel like you kind of understand what I'm trying to say.
I mean, coping mechanisms exist. That's how we get through our day-to-day life. And so, because I would say I definitely had anxiety growing up, a gay kid in rural Northwest Ohio, that I learned how to hide and cope with it, because those would be seen as weaknesses, or those would be seen as opportunities or openings for people to attack.
Yeah.
And so you have to hide it, especially at that age with the tyrants that are other children.
Yeah. Teenagers are ruthless.
Right. I was one. I was. So, yeah. And so I think today, being able to be more open about my mental state, and then being able to assess how I feel and be able to understand where my emotions are coming from, being emotionally aware of myself and being emotionally smart of just conditions and being empathetic to others, really has allowed for myself to be like, this is what I'm feeling. That's okay. What do I need to do to move forward and get over it? And not just get over it, but process the information, or process the event and move forward so it doesn't maybe affect me as the same in the future.
Right. Yeah, I think you're doing a great job with it.
Try.
So I spoke to you about this earlier, and I want to take like a complete 90-degree turn here.
All right, where are we going, Ben?
So this isn't something that I like try to, I guess, record and have the conversation about, but I was following the news recently, surprisingly, and comedian Dave Chappelle released his Closer stand-up special, and I find it relevant to speak about it here now with you and like get some understanding on a perspective from someone in the LGBTQ plus community, and I want to know what you think. You watched it, right?
So, okay, yes. I watched it because I like it from the horse's mouth. I don't like regurgitated information. Like,
yes.
I'm a data analyst. If I'm gonna look at something, I need the source. That's how I am. I will say I'm not a trans person. I am a white individual. I am gay. I'm queer. But I am not a trans individual. Dave Chappelle, I will say it was problematic what he was saying, especially his references to being a TERF and any defense of J.K. Rowling. It was reprehensible. I will say that there were aspects of his routine, though, that he is a comedian, and a lot of it was satirical or sarcastic in voice, and that a lot of his gripe that he points out with his humor, the statement that he's trying to make with this act, was that queer individuals, especially white queer individuals, trans, gay, what have you, really are able to turn on and off their diversity, their whiteness. They're able to use their whiteness in a way that is beneficial.
Privilege.
Yes, they're able to use their privilege as being white in situations where a black person would not be able to use those. And to that degree, he is correct. I, as a white gay man, I have a lot of privilege that a black man or a black gay man or any person of color would not have that I have. And for me to be able to claim that, yes, I am a person of diversity, I need to own and be that diversity wholly all the time, and accept that I am truly and wholly diverse. But code switching happens. I can go into a situation and present myself as, I hate the term, normal. I can present myself as a white guy that you don't know anything else, but I'm a white guy.
Yeah.
And
that's
the problem.
Yeah.
And I don't want to make excuses for Dave Chappelle. What he said was reprehensible. He is anti-trans. I think the larger point of what he is saying about the queer movement, moreover, is that if we're going to own our diversity, then own it and be more like those individuals in the early days of the queer movement of Stonewall in New York, and don't be fucking afraid to throw a brick. And I would advocate that. There are aspects of the queer community that want to assimilate and normalize into heterosexual culture. And for a large part, I don't want that. And I'm speaking for myself here. I don't want my queerness to be normalized. I want to be individual. I don't want everything about me to become commonplace, because I am an individual. I am different, and that's okay. I want my difference to be okay. Yeah,
normal is a very strange term, I think, both of our eyes. I don't think people should be treated differently just because of who they are, but I don't think there should be like a normal treatment for people. Does that make sense?
Come to where people are, not where you're at.
Yeah.
Meet someone where they're at. If that's where they want to be, meet them there. And so, yes. And so back to the Dave Chappelle. he's problematic. That's all that I can really say. And I don't want to defend his remarks, and I don't want to have my words misconstrued. I think the big thing that he identified that resonates with me, that I can say I do agree with, is that white queer people are still privileged and need to look in the mirror and really evaluate and make sure that when we are advocating for our space, for queerness, that we are doing so in a way that does not take away from other voices, does not take away from people of color voices. Because we are white and queer, we can hide.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So one point that I would like to make is I think that a lot of what he said, like, I don't want to say what he says was right. I don't want to say what he says was wrong. I want to say that a lot of what he says is more in a joking manner, but I don't want to say that he's just making light of things. I want to say that there is a level of seriousness and there's a level of making fun of something that he has, and it kind of meshes, and there's a level of understanding that listeners need to have to understand that sometimes he's being serious and sometimes he's not. But I'm not saying what he said was correct.
Right. What he said was not correct, especially in regards to the trans community, especially when his discussion revolved around J.K. Rowling and TERFs. So that part of it was, yes. And I don't want to give him freedom or leeway for that because he's a comedian. But I think other people should still be able to critique other communities' actions for progress. Because that does not take away from the progress. It's challenging the mode of that progress. And hopefully presenting ideas of new ways to improve that. Because at the end of the day, I think we all want a world of peace and harmony. It's how do we get there?
Yeah.
And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, at one point even in Chappelle's stand-up routine, he compared MLK and Malcolm X in their two approaches to the freedom marches and the Black Panther movement. And so the critique is there that there are multiple ways of moving a movement forward. Not saying one or the other is better, but identifying that there are good parts and bad parts to both or all styles of moving the mission forward.
Yeah, I'd say there's a big difference in movement styles in the past, 1900s to 2000s and then 2000s to today. I think there's a huge difference that he highlights, but I'm also not going to say that one is right and one is wrong.
Like I will freely criticize the Human Rights Campaign. They are a lot of just white serving gay and lesbian individuals. They lack the trans community, or have historically lacked that part of the community, representing them and advocating for them. Not to say they didn't, but that it was not the primary focus. And that the primary focus was on marriage equality. And to show that, it was primarily focused on two white men or two white women normalizing into heterosexual culture, which that is problematic because there are several queer individuals out there that don't fit the heteronormative lifestyle, and that's okay. So the critique there is that the HRC did good on providing marriage equality, but that's not the only queer movement that's been going on. That's just but in what has been the talking point and been in the news, because that is what conservatives have been fighting against. Because that is the most mainstream aspect, is just people wanting equal protection under the law of if they do get married to somebody, that they want to have that same experience under the law.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. There's definitely more that needs to be done in the sense of progress and accepting people for who they are and letting them, I guess, assimilate into the heterosexual norm that has been, I don't know, what
ingrained for the last 2,000 years.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, I just let people be people, man. As long as no one's causing harm to anyone else and you're not hurting others, you're not harming anyone's property or whatever, like, as long as,
all done with respect to the individual's wants and desires.
Yeah, and I think there's more conversations that need to be had of just sitting down and getting to know someone and understanding where they come from to really, I guess, open the eyes of other individuals to realize that why would I care what someone else does behind closed doors in their own home if they're not hurting someone?
I'll challenge you and take it one further. If it's out in the street and it's not hurting anybody and it's not providing a public nuisance, why the fuck does it matter to you?
Right. Yeah, I failed to mention that. I would also say that as well. I don't care if you and your two boyfriends are hanging out in the street in front of my house, and
so long as we're not fornicating.
Yeah.
Who am I to care?
Yeah, it's an interesting world we live in. But do you have anything else that you want to add into that, or?
The queer movement is not dead and it's not going anywhere. There's still a lot of things we need to do to get people on the same page with equality, especially the children in high schools that are trans or questioning or genderqueer or somewhere in between or elsewhere on the gender spectrum. We do need to have supports in place and have a place that is safe and secure for these children to feel like they are okay and that they are going to be safe. There does need to be more done for those children's safety, so that way they can be who they are and express themselves in the way that they want to be. There just needs to be more support for that. One of my good friends formerly worked for the Trevor Project and was helping get bills passed across the country, and they indicated that during COVID, their suicide hotlines were spiking through the roof because not just queer kids, not just gay kids, including trans kids, but a lot of kids in general were experiencing increases in trauma at home from being with their parents prolonged, because these children were spending time with their abusers more so than they were previously.
That's terrifying to me.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit, I can't imagine what like kids are going through living, their lives how they want to, and being stuck with, the people abusing them the most.
Yeah, so just love your kid for being a kid. Like, let them be. Just hope that they mature and are good people.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think there's a level of education that needs to be given, and an understanding that needs to be had for, people to just be people these days. And you shouldn't hate someone because of who they love or their difference of opinion or their skin color or, whatever. Like,
how they dress or how they present themselves to society. It doesn't fucking matter.
yeah, absolutely. I can tell you that I have had we've had deep discussions and difference of opinions, and we talk about it for a while, and
I've
we
gotten you
still
around to 'em.
absolutely love each other.
I've gotten you over to my side on most of them.
Well, yeah, there's some things that we have discussed, and there's even things where we're playing devil's advocate,
yes.
or we're trying to hit all the points, and we're having a deep discussion, but we still love each other, and we can both sit here and talk about something completely messed up in the ways that I don't know, people have been treated, and one of us could say one side and one of us could say another side, and we could still sit here and have an intelligent discussion. We're not yelling at each other or whatever. And I think
we also lived with each other for a year in very close proximity.
Yeah, but I think that needs to be had more often. And I think that there needs to be that step back of perspective, and not just sit here and have your horse blinders on.
I'll agree with you, but challenge you. I'm not going to sit down with anybody that wants me dead.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
So
I wouldn't recommend that.
So to that end, I don't think any queer person, I don't need to have a dialogue with anybody who's a white nationalist, a neo-Nazi, et cetera, that wants to see me, or anybody like me, or anybody that's trans, or anybody that's black, or anybody that's Jew. We don't have to sit down with them. I know where they're at. I know what they want.
Yeah.
There's no middle ground between them wanting me dead, or them not wanting me where I'm at now, and me just wanting to exist.
Right. Yeah, I think that would be more of an extreme case that I would probably leave off of my ideas. I think that there's a lot more help that those type of people need.
Well, they're brainwashed and they're conditioned to believe what they're believing.
Yeah. It's an interesting rabbit hole to go down, and I don't know. I don't have any answers, and I don't have any deep, considerable, critical thoughts about that. But yeah, I was taking the regular people.
Us deciding what the next levy should be to increase the school taxes for the taxpayers to fund the new stadium.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. we can have an impassioned discussion about that.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
But I would say let's increase that tax so that way we can fund the arts department again.
Yeah.
Because those, were the biggest cuts, and we need the arts people.
Yeah, I would agree with
Don't
that.
get me wrong. I enjoy sports.
Mm-hmm.
There is something to be said about the time and dedication and effort that people put into their sport, but there are also creatives out there that need to be supported and given the opportunity to showcase their talents as well in places other than the physicality of sporting.
Absolutely. I would agree with you. So I know that we could sit here for another 4 hours and discuss this.
we can talk for forever. We know this.
Yeah, we know this. We've sat here for 12 hours in a Sunday to do nothing but chit chat.
Okay. Yeah.
But I do want to wrap this up.
Okay. We covered a lot.
We did cover a lot, and I think it's interesting. I think we were just starting to get into a deeper level of you and I,
Yeah.
and we could go another episode and just like chat about whatever.
Love to.
Thank you. I would love that. But I do want to ask you one more question.
Please.
That I will be asking everyone.
Okay.
Is there anything that you want to leave as like the legacy of JoJo? Is like any advice? What would you give the advice of, 7-year-old you? What advice would you want, any family members that hear this and, you're not here anymore?
Right.
What do you want to live on in your name?
So the thing that I always come back to is empathy. It's live life of empathy. Always be looking for how you can try and better understand someone else, someone whose conditions in life are not as good as your own. And just always consider how are my actions, or how is my treatment towards those people going to affect them in what they're doing. And so what I mean is live life of empathy so that way you have an understanding of, if I do this, it's going to affect these people in this way. Is that good or bad? And is that what I want people to know my actions for? So in life, be empathetic to all people, so that way you help that person, you provide in a way so that way the place is better for them tomorrow than it is today. And I'm not necessarily saying give your last $20 bill to the person on the corner, but give your time, give your energy, give your resources to making the world, the community around you better today for tomorrow. Just move forward and be helpful.
I love it. I think that's awesome. Yeah. I think that's great advice. I love it. I try to live by those words as well. Yeah. Anything else?
That does it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank
I
you.
had a fantastic time.
Same.
This was awesome listening to you and like your perspective and everything that you have to say, and living and growing up the way that you did. I think it's fascinating.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for hanging out, and until next time. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Fatal to Prejudice. If you or anyone you know would like to be a guest, please visit my website at CameronChats.com and fill out the contact me form. Please fill out the subject line as podcast interview and write me a small blurb on why you or someone you know should be a guest. I'll leave a link in the description for ease of access. You can support this podcast by listening to it on your favorite podcasting site. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Another way to support is by becoming a Patreon at patreon.com/Fatal to Prejudice. Patreon is the only monetary support system. If you would like to sign up and support through there, I am forever grateful for you. Again, thank you for tuning in.